Hey Mona, what if I told you you can now do all of your project planning right inside GitHub? Epics, sprints, group tables, Kanban boards across multiple repositories and teams. Let's take a look.
We can create personal projects under the Projects tab in GitHub, or we can go to an organization to see existing projects which have been shared with us. The New Project button leads us to a list of templates. And while I could create an empty project and shape it any way I like, it helps my organization to stay coordinated if I pick a template they've recommended and customized. Here, I'll use the Kanban template and give it a name. I can even add emoji to make it more recognizable. Before we begin adding tasks, let's click the ellipsis and pick Settings. The Manage Access option on the left lets me add other people or teams to this project and choose their access level, whether they can administer, modify, or merely view the project. Next, I'll update the project details, adding a plain text description to let viewers know what this project is about, and a more detailed README, which can include styled markdown with links, images, videos, and more. As my project progresses, I can even add status updates. Each of these summarizes our progress over a specific time period, letting people know whether it's still on track and any important updates they should be aware of. The empty template I'm using has examples of a board view, a table, and a roadmap. I can customize these, but I can also create as many new views as I want. Let's experiment with this by making a new table view. And let's add a few items to the project. We can simply type and create a new draft item, or we can import issues from one or more repositories. As I add these items, they are added to the project as a whole, so I'll be able to use them in any of the views inside this project. Once I have items in the project, I can filter the view by any field, either by typing or using the pick list. I could also filter by free text or create complex logical filters. Each column in this view shows one of these fields. I can sort, hide, or rearrange these columns. And if an existing field isn't shown, I can add it to the view. These are all drawn from the properties of the existing issues. But I also have the ability to create new fields, which will only be shown in this specific project. Let's create a field to specify the expected difficulty of each task. Since I've chosen to make it a single select field, I can also specify the selectable values and even customize each of them with a color and a description. Now, I can easily set the field value for any of my items. Or, if I wanted to, I could choose to add this field to another view. But before we go any further, let's save the view, which makes my filter and layout changes available to other viewers. I should probably name the view too. Let's call it Unit Tests. Clean up the filter, and then explore how we can further customize the view. The dropdown in the View tab again allows me to change the sorting, but also has more complex options like grouping and slicing. Grouping by a field makes it easy to see which items have different values or even no value for that particular field. Slicing works a little differently. This creates a clickable area to the left of the table, and the viewer can pick which of these slices to focus on at any given time. Used together, grouping and slicing provide powerful ways to visualize and sift through your items. Of course, you'll also want to create charts to visualize your project. Clicking the Insights button, we find the default Burnup chart, but also a place to create new custom charts. These can have different layouts, such as line or stacked columns. Here, I'll visualize the difficulty of tasks across our project, group them by assignee, and use the count of items to see if any team member is currently overloaded. And what project would be complete without automation? The Workflows option under the ellipsis provides a way to graphically configure board automation. For example, we might want certain issues to be automatically added to our board as they are created or updated. Let's configure the Auto Add to Project workflow. I'll refine the selection filter, verify that it is pulling from the correct repository, then save the changes and make this workflow active. With this done, I'll never again need to manually import issues. Or perhaps I want all new issues to automatically be set to ready status, skipping the backlog entirely. I'm free to customize this and all the other workflows, making the project run exactly the way I want.
So GitHub project boards have all the capabilities we need in a full-fledged project management tool, but how can we use this to do real project management? Whether we're doing Agile or something more lightweight, how can we handle our epics, stories, tasks, breakdowns? How can we do our daily ceremonies that are part of keeping our team running? Let's take a look.
Now, Project Boards is very flexible, so it supports lots of different types of planning. You might be doing classic sprints, some kind of Agile, very lightweight Kanban boards, etc. Here, I've got a project that has lots of different views on my content, but I'm going to start with the All tab here. This by default is the thing that would first show up. You would just see all of your issues unfiltered. Now I can temporarily filter things by anything I want. I could search for specific keywords, or I could look for ones that only have a particular status. For example, the ones that we currently have in planning. But to go deeper, I also want to show you what these different fields mean and how they relate to the issues themselves. So each line on this project board, each item, is either a draft item, something I've just typed but haven't turned into an issue, or it's an issue that I've pulled in from another repository somewhere. And I can pull from multiple repositories. Each of these individual issues may come from a separate repo. I've got them listed here. And that's appropriate when you're doing large projects that may have many different code repos, or if you're a team that's aggregating work from other projects. So I might, for example, be a content team responsible for talking about what the newest features and announcements are across many different products. And then I might want to flow those individual teams, epics, or stories into an overall project board for myself to look at. Clicking into any one of these, I can see I've got the issue itself. I can see what repo it's in. If I wanted to, I could follow this link or hit the breakout over here in order to look at this in a new tab all by itself. And then I would get the view I'm more used to, where I'm seeing it inside the repo context. But this little breakout tab lets me quickly examine and even make some small issues like adding comments to the issue itself. I can change assignees, I can change labels, etc. But one thing I want you to notice is that you have all of the fields on any issue that you would expect: assignees, labels, type, etc. But we also have an additional panel here which lists which projects this issue is on. So I just told you that a project can have issues from more than one repo. Well, the reverse is true. An issue can be on more than one project board. Again, appropriate because the work I'm doing, it might be tracked by my project manager who's overseeing the actual application I'm building, but it might also be tracked by separate teams who have an interest in what I'm doing. So I'll see here on the side more than one in some cases of these projects. I can choose to add something to a project by simply clicking on the settings there, but I can also quickly look at all of the properties that are set inside that project board for this particular issue. And here I want to make a distinction. There are the built-in issue properties here, milestone relationships, etc. But there's also project-specific properties, what I might think of as columns inside a table on the project board, but really they are fields which are represented in the project itself. So the views I'm seeing inside the boards themselves, the actual columns, these are a combination of both. So I might add a field which represents some standard value on an issue, something like, say, what labels it has, but I might also add a field which is specific to this project. So, for example, which cycle I have defined this into, or which quarter I've decided to do work on. Where are these extra fields set? Well, I can add one by simply clicking the plus here, but then picking new field. and that will actually generate a new field inside the project. Again, that's linked to the project, not specific to that particular issue. Or I can see and edit all of these by going into the settings for the project, and I can see that there's a list of custom fields here. I could modify any of these. I could, for example, on one of my iterative types, and I'll talk about those in a second, I could set what the actual iterations should be. Each of those has a separate time span. Or I can, again, here create new custom fields of whatever type I want: text, number, date, single select, iteration, etc. But let's go back to the actual board. I'm going to remove those changes I just made, and note that I said these are temporary, these filters I'm creating, right? When I do those modifications, I'll see that this discard or save button lights up, and that might be a change which is adding another field column here, making it visible, or it might be doing a search here. Both of those are changes. And what I'll do is, I see that blue up here, that indicates this has changed. If I wanted to save this, that would then become a permanent change to this view for everybody who's looking at this project. In this particular case, I don't want that. So when I'm done kind of doing whatever filtering I want, I'm going to hit discard instead. By the way, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that you can also choose to hide fields by simply clicking on them and selecting hide. So you get to pick whatever you want here inside this view. These are all editable right in place. So I can grab a different value from a select field, or if I'm editing assignees, I could search for and then attach those assignees to this item. And if it was a string or a number, I could change those by just simply typing right in place. All right, now let's delve a little bit deeper into the relationships between different issues, right? And this is a place where two concepts come in. One is sub-issues and the other is types. So I can see here I have a column called Sub-Issues Progress. Sub-Issues Progress shows me if there are any sub-issues for a particular issue, how far along I've gone. So what's a sub-issue? Let's start there. I'll click on one of these, say task management, and I'll see that inside the issue itself, I've created a list of sub-issues. This is something you can just do in your issues themselves. There's a create sub-issues button. You can go ahead and you can add either existing issues or you can create a new one on the fly right there. But the board essentially is able to detect whether or not an issue has sub-issues, and if so, it will flow that visibility up here when I click on that sub-issues progress. We can also see that clicking into any one of these, on the field value there for the sub-issues progress, I get an automatic different filter that says, hey, what are all of the parent issues to this? So I can go both ways. I can look at the sub-issues to an item, or I can go and find its parents. In fact, I could even add a separate column here called parent issue. And so for any items here which are themselves children of some other issue, I have a quick visibility and link to whatever that parent issue is. Another thing that's really going to help here is the concept of issue types. Because if we're coming from classic 3-tier project management, we're thinking about usually epics, stories, and individual features or tasks as sort of those 3 different levels. And so what I might want to do is I can show here, add the field type, just so it's visible. And I can see that I have things here categorized. Some of them are bugs, some of them are tasks, some of them are epics, some of them are features, and some of them are even this highest level kind of value called initiative, right? So one way that I might start doing my project planning and breakdown for a large project is I might go in, create a bunch of initiatives or epics that are sub-items of those, and then create features or stories, which are sub-items of those, and create individual tasks hanging off of those. I can nest that to many different depths. Realistically, I'm only using, in most cases, 3 to 5 levels of depths for the projects that I'm working on. Okay, so let's discard all of this though and start looking at some views which might really help me understand how I'm going to think about and look at this work on a day-to-day basis. And here it's important to note these 3 different types of views. And you can actually see what happens when I change this. I'm just looking at this list of all issues here. I might switch it over to a board view, but basically it's all the same issues that I was just looking at. It's just visualized in a different way. Similarly, I might switch over to roadmap, which is in fact the roadmap view. So somebody has already gone and created a roadmap style view here, but they've also filtered things out properly with this has sprint to show ones that actually have actual cycles showing here, right? Now, what about this breakdown here on the left? Well, that's a group by. So we can see that this has the option to group by whichever of these fields we want. Now, in the roadmap view, what that means is that we're getting these horizontal sections for each of the different possible values for whichever item we're grouping by. Let's take a quick look at what it looks like to group this by something else. So maybe I'm going to use the milestone property from my issues. And I can see where I am with my beta, where I am with my alpha, etc., and the different time points there. I can also choose to do a slice by. So maybe I want to see things both by which squad they're in. So I'm going to revert that grouping by to team, but I might also want to see what milestone they relate to. And when I do that, I get this really cool view where I have those groupings on the right, but I can then subset all of the different information by picking this milestone slice at any time, even including ones that don't have a milestone, which might be an important factor, that there's things I want to throw in here and give them actual milestones. I can re-click one of those to simply clear out my filter. But for now, I'm going to discard so I can show you another view. By the way, you may be wondering, how these time slices are shown, right? So clicking into that particular issue, I can see that there's an actual cycle defined for this, and that cycle has particular dates. I can create more than one iteration. Sprint by default is an iteration that shows up, though you could hide or remove it, but you can also choose to add other iterations. So this particular PM is, yes, tracking by sprints, but they're also keeping track of which quarter it actually falls into and which cycle it actually falls into for whatever project planning purposes they have. Okay, let's switch to something that I might use for planning on a more week-to-week basis, right? So here, things like my backlog really matter, right? Now, this is one way personally I like to look at my backlog by Kanban style, so I can actually see, hey, what's in each state, what's going to be moving forward. A cool little thing here, I can actually take these and I can grab these and I can drag and drop them if I want. Now, when I do that, it's actually changing the data associated with that issue. So if I look in here and I take a look at that issue, I will now see that its status is going to have moved to not started. Similarly, in here, I could move that back to planning, and I will see my Kanban view automatically refresh itself so things flow into the right place. Now, when I'm looking at this, I'm, of course, investigating, all right, who's working on what, where they are in the process, and I'll get a big picture there. But then I also want to have the ability to look at my daily stand-ups, right, which this view is optimized for, just to take a look at what they've done here. They've taken a standard board view. They've set that column by status, as in our prior view that we were looking at, but then they've also added a group by priority. So basically they're adding swim lanes into this Kanban board. This allows me to go in and then say, all right, well, yeah, I've got things in planning that are urgent. Maybe I should be moving those over and getting people working on them right away. So as we're doing our stand-up, I'm going to ask, okay, why are these really urgent things still in the planning phase? Can we move them forward? Are there any blockers, etc.? And by the way, if I want to know blockers, I'll then punch into that, see if there are sub-items related. So again, that's just a matter of punching into it and then looking around, seeing what the sub-issues are and what state they're in. I might scroll down here too and say, all right, well, we have things that have no priority at all. Why haven't we picked a priority for those? Or we have things that are in only medium priority, but they're already in review. Was there a reason we decided to go ahead with those before we did the higher, more urgent items? So all the usual ceremonies and what I might have, but I'm going to be able to quickly visualize and see what I need to talk to with my team right here. Oh, and by the way, if I'm looking at a Kanban board, I also have this option here to set the limit as to the number of items that I want to show in this particular column. That really helps if I'm just getting too many items in one particular view and I want to trim it down. That's separate from the ability to take a particular issue and to archive it, available through the ellipsis inside the issue itself. That'll just basically take it out of the project view entirely and move it into this archived items view where I can see all the things I've chosen to archive before. Once it's in there, if I want to bring it back, I can, or I can simply remove it from the project entirely. Bug triage board is often useful. Here, what I'm doing is I'm filtering by just the things that are bug and currently in triage. So I might be looking at my current state of things with my daily stand-up board, but then I'll hop over to this triage board that we've created and say, hey, which of these bugs are really important? What do we need to move forward with? I can see the priorities here. Again, I might decide to do something like slice, group those by priority, just to give myself a little bit of a better visibility on where they are. And most importantly, for individual contributors to a team, we'll want to have a tab which is my work. Now, I'm not on this particular project, so I've got nothing assigned, but I always like to have one of these available so that a team member coming in can just very quickly jump into that tab or even make it their home page and just see what they currently need to be working on. And you'll notice here we've taken advantage of a special keyword @me, which is available inside the filters. So when I'm creating a filter, I start typing the filter name, and I could choose to just keep on typing, but here I can see the list of all possible values. So I might choose to see, hey, I want to see what 2% Silk is working on right now, but I might also want to use this special name, me, or note that I can even do exclude filters in here. So these are logical filters, and I could say something like, show me all the work that's not assigned to me by simply adding the minus in there as well. Now, a few other things that are going to be important as you're looking at the very large picture over a project. What's our team capacity look like? How are different people assigned to different tasks and at what weights? So I can see here that I've got, this is sliced by assignee, and it is grouped by status. So I can quickly say, hey, let's take away the triage and the started. Maybe I'm looking at things that are currently being planned, and I'm looking at things that are currently being built. I can see my count of items up there, but what about this estimate here? And we can see that there's this field sum option inside my view. How does that work? Well, I can sum up the raw count, simply the number of issues in there. But if there are other numeric fields in here, estimate, effort, ranking, those are all numeric, I can add those as field sums to look at. This is really, really helpful when I'm looking at this kind of view and I want to say, hey, is a particular individual overloaded? Well, let's take a look at one of these. I can see 2% Silk, currently 2 items, no estimates there or effort values. I'll take a look at another user like A's and Matt and say, okay, well, he looks like he's a little bit loaded here. He's got an estimate of 9 in planning, though it's only 1 in effort, so that's okay. Though I might wonder with that low in effort value, maybe that field just wasn't filled in. So let's add that to our view so we can see. All right, yeah, and I can see that several of these items don't have an effort value at all, so that might be a problem. I'm going to flip back over to all here, and I'm going to use this opportunity to construct a new view. So here, I'm going to add that effort column, and I'm going to say, let's take a look at all items which do not have any effort assigned. Looks like a problem to me, right? All of these probably represent things that we haven't done our full weighting on. However you do your weighting, whether it's pointing, hours, story points, etc., you're going to want some column that shows you what that's going to be. And the fact that certain people don't have any, certain issues don't have any assigned is not good, right? So I'm going to take this, and right now I've been modifying this all tab, but I actually want to create a brand new view here so that we can just keep coming back to that. So I pick this Save Changes to New View option. And what that does is you'll see it creates a new tab, discards my changes on the old tab. There's no longer a blue dot there. And it creates this new view over here. I can rename it by simply clicking here in the title and say Needs Pointing. This is now going to be a persistent tab that everybody else is going to see, and I'm going to be able to link to. By the way, worth noting that every single tab, every single view gets its own URL. So you can see here I've got the project number, but I've also got a particular view under it. And so if I take this URL and I send it to somebody, they're going to end up on this particular tab. In fact, we can go even deeper. If I make a temporary modification, something like adding a filter, I can see that this will actually change to include that transient filter option as well. So any changes I make that I haven't saved, those are going to show up as parameters to the URL. So again, I could save this as a permanent tab, sure, which we're going to want to refer to regularly. But if I wanted to point something out to a particular individual and just say, hey, take a look at just this set of issues, I could create a temporary filter and then send them that link, and they'd be able to see exactly what I was seeing. Now I'd like to show you a few things in the settings just so you can be thinking about how you might customize your own project. You've seen how to change these different views, but what about the overall project values? One of those is the insights, where I can decide, hey, which kinds of charts do I want? Now, I've got the option here to create a new chart, Now I've got the option here to create a new chart if I want, but I also want to show you this to give you a little bit of inspiration as to what other kinds of things you might want. You might want to be, for example, tracking how many bugs you have in these different cycles. Again, as we create charts or we configure them, we get to choose how to group them and what counts to add into the axis, etc. So this is showing me right here in a nice stacked column view, all right, across each of my cycles here, how many items do I have that are bugs in these different statuses? So filtered by bug and then grouped by status. I might want to show what repositories things are coming from. Again, working on a large project, lots of different moving pieces, different pieces of software that attach to it. Each one of those is going to have probably a separate repository. And here I can start to see where my work is really coming from. I can look at my sprints, how many issues I've got in them. I might break things down by their status. Not too many in urgent, so we're okay. Whole lot in no priority. So that tells me, all right, I might want to go in, again, construct a view, which is something like needs priority, and have people focus on that for a little while. Cycle estimates, again, a useful way of doing sums. And we can see, again, I'm using that y-axis field estimate and saying sum of a field. I could also do averages, minimums, etc. if I wanted to. Those could be useful, and so on. So those are some of the insights options that you can take advantage of. I'm going to back out of that. And now take a look at the project details. This is nicely filled out. We've got a good name for it. We've got a nice short description. We've got a little README, including a link to the roadmap. Edit those at any time if I want. But also these nice status updates. So showing us that at each of these points in time, is my project on track? Hey, what happened inside each of these? Little description for folks. Notice that we're even, indicating, hey, certain issues or other items you might want to take a look at. And then lastly, let's just walk through workflows. These are simply ways that I can automate different things. I can auto add items into the project, basically saying, hey, when these come from a particular repo and they have a particular status, add them into the project. I get to pick what repo I come from, what type, add a complex filter, etc. But I can do lots of other things here. I can say, hey, when an item is reopened, what status do I want it to go into? Here we've chosen that when an item reopens, we should put it into review so we get a chance to get eyes on it again. When an item is closed, what status? You might have done, you might have shipped, you might have a pre-review status, so that can be pretty important. But then we can also condition on other things, like say when a pull request is approved, or when I should automatically archive items. By the way, with a word to that. So maybe I'll just point out a few other options here. I could turn this into a template so that the rest of my organization can use it. I can make a simple copy of this entire board so that I could make a new set of customizations for a different team or set of viewers or just for myself. So with that, I hope you've gotten a good idea of how we can use these, how we can create new views, slice and dice things in ways that are going to be useful to your team. And hopefully you'll find this as enjoyable as I do for all of my day-to-day work.
So go find that project tab in GitHub and try it out today. This is epic. Literally.